I remember the ache first, the heavy, suffocating weight of watching her fade into the background while everyone else laughed. I sat at the edge of the room, barely breathing, the scent of burnt coffee and stale perfume clinging to the air, her presence treated like air itself. She moved quietly, pouring herself another cup, a polite smile pasted across her face, yet no one noticed. Every kind gesture, every small contribution she made, vanished into thin air, her feelings swallowed by indifference. I could hear the sharp edge in her voice when she offered to help, a voice cracking ever so slightly, only for Jason to interrupt, sneer, and dismiss her. The sting was palpable, like nails against skin. My phone buzzed suddenly, another group chat. I glimpsed the screen. Her birthday plans were being mocked behind her back. And yet, she laughed, a fragile, trembling sound, brushing it off, her hand quivering slightly with the humiliation she refused to show. Outside, the neighbor's party thumped through the walls, mocking her in rhythm, while here she stood sidelined, unnoticed, unheard. A glass slipped from her hand and shattered across the floor. Laughter erupted from the room, cruel and sharp, and I saw the shame ignite across her cheeks like fire. My stomach tightened as she quietly retreated to the kitchen, swallowed by pride and a silence that screamed more than words ever could. The smell of her oven-baked pie lingered, sweet and warm yet ignored, while everyone fawned over store-bought desserts with loud, shallow delight. Each slight, each subtle dismissal pressed down on her shoulders like a physical weight. I caught her eyes in a private glance, glossy with tears she refused to let fall. That look hooked me, anchored me, told me that this was the moment everything would start to shift. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I guess I'm just invisible sometimes." My chest ached at the honesty, the quiet devastation, the lifetime of being unseen. Her phone buzzed again, another ignored message. I watched her hands tremble, tiny quivers of resignation passing across her fingers, and in that instant I understood. The storm hadn't hit yet, but it was gathering inside her, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. I've watched her entire life unfold like a quiet storm, and I can trace every sacrifice she ever made. She left behind a small-town career, her own dreams tucked away, to care for her younger siblings. Teenage years marked by endless bullying, yet she never retaliated. She protected, she gave, she poured herself out without ever asking for recognition. I see her in college, heart cracked for the first time. Her boyfriend failed an exam. She comforted him with tenderness, and he walked away anyway. The weight of abandonment settled deep, but she held herself together. At home, her family often dismissed her guidance, minimized her decisions, and ignored her accomplishments, as if they had no value. I can still smell the old books in her childhood home, the dusty, comforting refuge she clung to while the world turned its back. She hummed lullabies to her younger cousins, soothing them while adults laughed at trivial matters, dismissing her insight and wisdom. Betrayal left deeper marks. Her closest friend used her generosity as a stepping stone, leaving scars invisible to everyone else. Work was no better. She gave everything, labored meticulously, offered ideas that were stolen by louder, more arrogant colleagues, and promotions slipped past her again and again. Childhood trauma shadowed her too, a sudden move, leaving friends, dreams, and comfort behind for a family that barely noticed her pain. I remember the bathroom mirrors, the silent tears she shed when no one was watching, the loneliness no one could touch or acknowledge. Yet, in all that despair, she offered subtle glances toward me, as if silently begging, "See me, notice me." Her resilience was a secret weapon. Despite heartbreak, humiliation, and unending solitude, she kept standing, and our bond, our shared silence, was its own language, an unspoken understanding of love unrecognized, pain unacknowledged. When she smiled, even briefly, the room lit up. Those rare moments of joy were fleeting, though, because the world never reflected her light back. And yet, Beneath all that suffering, I could feel the steel forming in her, a quiet, impenetrable strength, waiting for the right moment to turn the world upside down. Her patience was fraying, a thin veneer cracking over years of silent endurance. I noticed it in the tilt of her head, the subtle defiance in her gestures, the way she stopped muttering apologies for minor mistakes that never deserved one. Family events turned into battlegrounds of microaggressions, ignored invitations, casual snubs, each one a sharpened blade she bore quietly. I saw her corner Jason once, voice low but trembling with anger. "Why do you always dismiss me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He laughed it off, shrugged, and walked away. Nobody heard her, nobody listened, and I could feel her rage simmering, restrained but relentless. Late at night, I would hear her voice in my ear over the phone, raw with frustration, a whisper that trembled between despair and fury. She spoke of holidays ruined by casual cruelty, her cooking dismissed, her seating arrangements overlooked, her efforts mocked. Sarcastic comments, intentional forgettings, humiliation wrapped in smiles, all became the soundtrack of her patience wearing thin. I watched her small acts of rebellion, the dishes left unwashed, the messages ignored, the little freedoms she quietly reclaimed. They were tiny, almost invisible protests, but I could feel the tension building. Then the argument happened over a forgotten family commitment. Her voice finally cut through the noise. "I won't be invisible anymore," she shouted, but the room was deaf, indifferent, blind. After that, she withdrew further. Long hours spent alone in her apartment, eyes sharp, mind calculating. She watched, she planned, silently observing every slight, every betrayal. The air between her and the family crackled, anticipation hanging like static. Everyone could sense that a shift was coming, though none could guess its magnitude. "Unmuck." Her eyes would flick to me in quiet moments, a subtle plea. "Watch carefully. Notice what I endure." I did. I watched as she quietly removed herself from another humiliating gathering, leaving the room stunned, whispers ricocheting off walls. Her absence spoke louder than any words ever could. Curiosity, frustration, even fear began to creep into the hearts of those who had dismissed her for so long. I noticed the toll it took on her body. Sleepless nights, clenched jaws, sighs that carried years of unspoken pain. But beneath it all, a new determination burned, quiet, lethal, unstoppable. The call came late, a sudden vibration cutting through the quiet hum of her apartment. I saw her stare at the screen, eyes widening slightly, then narrowing, hardening. It was from a lawyer, someone who had witnessed the silent toll of years, or perhaps a long-lost friend bringing news, proof, validation of everything she had endured. In that moment, the soft, hurt woman I had always known was gone, replaced by a calculating, controlled force, coiled and ready. She unearthed the family's negligence, financial missteps, reputational cracks. Everything they had hidden or ignored lay bare before her. Emails, texts, social media posts, casual dismissals now transformed into evidence of betrayal, irrefutable and sharp. I watched as she moved through her apartment with precision, writing notes, organizing strategies, every step deliberate, every action a quiet declaration of intent. A memory surfaced, one I had never known, a vow whispered in solitude. I will never be dismissed again. That promise now guided every careful decision. Her first confrontation came quietly, but with undeniable impact. Polite, precise words delivered like surgical strikes. "I think it's time someone addressed this," she said, voice steady, cutting through layers of denial. I stayed in the shadows, witnessing the transformation unfold before me. The air itself thickened with anticipation. She did not raise her voice, yet her presence dominated the room. Family members sensed the shift, an unease crawling up their spines, but they could not place its source. Subtle reclamations followed. Credit restored where it had been stolen, wrongs corrected, lies exposed. Her confidence grew in increments, like a tide, leaving those who had belittled her nervous, unsure, destabilized. The first glimpses of poetic justice appeared in small, humiliating exposures, whispered admissions of guilt, awkward confrontations, stunned silence replacing laughter. Every act, every movement was a reminder that the balance had shifted. The invisible woman was gone. In her place stood authority, dignity, and a quiet, unstoppable power that demanded recognition. She planned it with precision, a public family gathering, every slight, every insult, every dismissive comment meticulously cataloged for maximum impact. I watched her move through the preparations with quiet purpose, notes in hand, evidence of years of neglect ready to unfold. Then came the social media reveal. Without raising her voice, without drama, she exposed hypocrisy, betrayal, and casual cruelty. Screens lit up with posts that documented what had always been invisible: the sneers, the ignored messages, the casual humiliation. And through it all, she remained calm, controlled, a storm contained in perfect poise. When she confronted Jason in front of the entire family, her voice was measured, every word a scalpel. "You think it was funny to dismiss me, to belittle me at every turn? Look around, you're finally facing the truth." The room went silent. Every smirk, every dismissive glance he had ever thrown now backfired spectacularly, reflecting back on him like shards of glass. Gasol, legal letters were delivered. Financial misdeeds, professional sabotage, long-hidden manipulations, everything laid bare. She orchestrated scenarios that forced her detractors to acknowledge their wrongdoing publicly, one by one. Even the matriarch of the family could not evade her. Words precise, unwavering, devastating in their clarity. As guilt, shame, regret. Faces drained of color as the weight of their actions hit. I saw her reclaiming her spaces. The chair she had been pushed from, the cooking station where her efforts were ignored, her words amplified until they could not be ignored. The culmination arrived like a wave, a toast, a speech, an acknowledgement of her worth in front of everyone who had overlooked her. The room shifted. She was no longer invisible. The humiliation that had been hers for decades now belonged to those who had dismissed her. I felt the subtle psychological victory, a quiet satisfaction radiating from her, restrained yet absolute. Family dynamics had shifted irrevocably. Respect was finally earned. Emotional debts, long ignored, were collected with precision. In that room, I saw justice not as loud chaos, but as calm, undeniable authority. Her authority. And I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Silence followed the storm like a heavy, satisfying exhale. Her presence was no longer questioned. Authority radiated from her in every glance, in every measured step. I watched her in private moments, leaning back in her favorite chair, a subtle smile brushing her lips, satisfaction tempered with the lingering ache of years lost. Family members approached cautiously, awkwardly attempting reconciliation, faces flushed with humility as they finally began to feel the weight of their neglect. Promotions came, recognition followed, and at family gatherings, the smiles directed at her were genuine this time, warm and unforced. I watched her reclaim old joys, the hobbies she had abandoned, the social interactions she had skipped to appease others. Her laughter no longer masked behind forced politeness. It rang freely, vibrant, uncontainable, a testament to the woman she had always been beneath the quiet endurance. She guided younger relatives, quietly ensuring they would never suffer the invisibility she once bore. I observed her victorious moments, reading in the golden light of afternoon, cooking meals she truly enjoyed, hosting gatherings entirely on her own terms. Each act was a subtle reclaiming of life she had long deferred. Emotional closure came like a gentle tide. She forgave herself for the years of self-doubt, embraced the strength and agency she had fought silently to protect. The lingering tension in the house shifted. Respect had been earned, humility enforced, and her presence became permanent, commanding. In those final moments, I reflected on the lessons etched into the silence, the cost of disregard, the quiet power of endurance, and the inevitability of justice when a woman refuses to remain invisible. Her story was no longer one of suffering. It was a testament, a warning, and a triumph all at once. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or taken for granted, listen closely. There is a power in silent strength, in patience, in watching and calculating your moves until the moment is yours. I've seen it firsthand in her, the quiet, deliberate force that transformed years of humiliation into triumph. In the final moments, her dignity shone brightest, unassailable, a calm radiance that could not be ignored. Every slight, every dismissal, every casual cruelty she endured had been carefully